Hello? There we go. Hello?
Hello.
Hey, you guys are sideways.
Let's turn it this way.
There you go.
How about that?
Yeah, there you go. Are you guys on the phone?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Had some technical difficulties.
No problem. I was having technical difficulties over here too. It was weird. How you guys doing this week?
Hanging in there. She's definitely like coming out of her shell,
Yeah.
getting a lot more confident, getting a lot mouthier. So we're working on redirecting her and trying to like get her to stop biting us. So we'd love some advice there. We sat down with Maddie, and she gave us some advice that we were probably walking her too much.
Okay.
Especially since she's so little.
Mm-hmm.
She also grew like 5 pounds this past week.
Yeah.
So she's massive.
Yeah, I was going to say she already looks bigger than from what I saw last week.
Huge.
Yeah, we weighed her at 17 pounds yesterday.
Right.
So,
wow.
Potty training is going pretty well though.
better.
We made it until 5:30 this morning, so she's essentially made it through a whole night now. I think tomorrow will be the test as to whether she can actually do for sure to our normal wake up time.
Yeah, good. That's because before, what was it, at 3 o'clock or something?
Yeah.
Excellent.
So we definitely moved faster than you suggested. We probably moved like a half an hour every night.
Sure.
And she was fine. No accidents too, since we've gotten her on this good schedule. A lot of the time we're like waking her up to go outside.
Yeah. Like if
she's adjusted well.
To go potty or whatever.
Sorry?
Like if she's sleeping and then it's time for her to go potty, you wake her up and then run her out.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And she's eating a lot better too since we started taking the food away. The one thing I'm a little bit nervous about is that she might be dehydrated. Like she's definitely like when we put the water down, like gulping it up.
Sure.
So we've been giving her a bit more water, especially at the feeding times, and a little bit more, especially when it's hot or when we've just been like running around outside, giving her more water throughout the day. Because she just seems thirsty all the time.
Right. So one thing would be keep an eye if she has any potty mistakes in the home. When you clean the urine, I always check to see if it's clear or light yellow.
Okay.
That means overhydration.
Yeah, it's always been yellow.
Yeah,
it's always been pretty dark yellow.
Pretty dark yellow when she's like out on the sidewalk and stuff too.
Okay, and just keep an eye on it. I know like it sounds weird, but I do all my puppies because when you're potty training, for humans, because as an adult we're potty trained, overhydration isn't a bad thing.
Yeah.
But for puppies, that's where things get a little tricky. And when you say she looks dehydrated, would you say it's like after a walk, or do you feel like even if it's just if you're inside in the AC and when you present water, she's still lapping it up as if like it's not enough?
Yeah, I think it's probably the latter. Although it's been kind of on and off. I definitely noticed it like after we went to the park. Yeah. She was like couldn't get enough. And a bit more like kind of like poking at her water bowl and looking at us. Although it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm like yesterday was pretty chill and she like left some in the bowl and that was okay.
I think it's mostly been like yesterday it was pretty hot, and each time she went out and walked a little bit to use the bathroom, when she came back she would like go straight to where the water bowl like typically is and check it out.
Yeah.
So with the change in the weather, like she has to adapt. And what you're doing is fine. Like you give her more water. The main thing is that you're keeping track of when you're giving her more water. So like you know what to expect in terms of potty breaks. And if she pees, like if you gave her a lot of water after a walk and she just pees a little bit, I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure you have more in there. So we're going to keep going until you like fully empty your bladder. But for puppies and dogs, like my guys, we went for a walk yesterday. And they were like, tongue was hanging out. They're just like, very wobbly because they're so used to the cool ending winter, early spring weather. So that like every year, I feel like they're always readapting and getting used to like, this is now the new temperature. Like even myself, because now yesterday was sunny and I was only out for like 3 or 4 hours, and I came home and I just like knocked out for like an hour because I was like so exhausted, so I'm not used to it, right? So same with the puppies and the dogs. And it's really just kind of building their stamina is how I put it. In terms of when we talk about exercise, because I know you spoke with Maddie about the walking and stuff. Did we talk about like general rule of thumb for activity?
You said like, was it 5 minutes per month, twice a day?
Yeah, that's what Maddie told us. We kind of discussed it with her because I think we were walking not too.
We were doing like 10 to 15 minutes instead of 5 to 10, so we've cut it back, and I've actually been using a like stopwatch while going, just to kind of be mindful of like when we do our little loops around the neighborhood, when she's getting close to time. And it's mostly been good. When she's doing it, she's been able to like walk in a somewhat structured way with me. I've noticed in the last couple days she has not been following behind quite as much. She's been more up to like where my level is, and then occasionally starting to try to go ahead and take the lead.
Yeah, so I think that was something that we mentioned last time, that she prefers to walk behind us. And I think maybe something that we weren't super clear about, that like, at least with me, like she'll sometimes like protest moving forward, but most of the time she just likes walking about 1.5 feet behind us. And just like hanging out back there. That's definitely, this week I've noticed she's gotten more protesty with me, and a lot more like, I think especially in the areas where she like runs with you, she's like, oh, we're going now. So definitely struggling with that a little.
So when it comes to puppies under 6 months with the leash walking stuff, like behind is fine, because it's really more the exposure and stuff. Now, if you're walking, she's constantly stopping, that's one thing. Right? So with puppies under 6 months, I'm not too worried about how well they walk, as long as they're not yanking you all over the place or putting pressure on their throat from pulling too much. And as the weeks go by, you're going to see an even bigger change in what, like personality, because she's starting to come into her own. And puppies mature very quickly. Right. So you noted from last week to this week, she went from lagging 1.5 feet behind to being more so like next to you. And the next week you might notice like, oh, now she's in front of us. Right. And I'm not, because when it comes to puppies, the training exercise that you would do are good. They're foundational. But in my experience, like they don't ever have a factor on big boy or big girl training. Because of the methods that I use. So typically with puppies, if you don't want her pulling you all over the place or like lagging too far behind, that's where the gentle leader comes into play. Mainly because of the trachea thing. Like I could care less what a puppy does, as long as they're not picking up stuff off the ground or, eating cigarette butts or things like that, or like, putting pressure on the throat. I just tell people, let them be a puppy, just walk, get them their exercise. As long as you're continuously moving, it's like okay if she's like wandering around and exploring. In my opinion, if you find it to be too distracting for her and you want to get from point A to point B, that's where that gentle leader would come into play, because it would give you immediate control. Where it's like, we're just walking, there's no time to dilly dally or whatever.
Got it.
You can always give you those breaks, because the stuff that you do now, behaviorally, it's not gonna be detrimental.
That's good.
So we did get a gentle leader. We went ahead and got one that's she's gonna grow into a little bit. It's like rated for 25 to 60 pounds, so it doesn't quite fit her face yet, but Meg's been introducing her to it and giving her treats and stuff when she puts her face in through, so she's getting warmed up to it.
And then you should be able to put the clasp. It'll just be really like loose here. Have you been able to do that at all?
Yeah, she's not loving it, but I give her treats in it. Eric said he took it out this morning and she started drooling. So we know that at least there's a positive association there. We haven't like walked her with it on yet, because she definitely doesn't like this thing, and the clasp is like, it's not like a strong enough like clasp where I can like, it basically has the like nose loop, and then you tighten it with a little thing, and the thing isn't really strong enough. Like she can kind of move her head around and it loosens and falls off.
When you put the clasp, is it at an angle or do you feel it snap?
I don't know.
It might not be locked down.
Yeah, maybe I'm not doing it right.
Yeah, so with the gentle leader, like it goes like this, right? And when you push down, it kind of feels stuck right here. And if you keep pushing, you'll feel like you're gonna break it, and then it'll snap.
Got it. Okay.
A lot of people stop there because it feels like a little piece of plastic. Like literally you're really squeezing it, and then you'll hear it click, and then that's what keeps it clasped. So if it's coming loose or slack, that's what's happening.
Got it. And to undo it, you just like unclasp it?
Yeah, you just, same thing, you just grab it and pull it up and it'll pop open.
Great.
Yeah,
that works.
Because that's happened when I first started using them like years ago. I did the same thing too, because I was like, I don't want to break this thing, and then it kept coming undone. I'm like, well, this is the stupidest thing ever. And then somebody was like, oh, you got to push it down even more. I'm like, oh, okay. So yeah, I tried. I'd fiddle with that because it shouldn't loosen at all.
Okay.
Cool. So even and just so that you're aware, once you start walking her with it, even though you've done positive association, expect her to protest.
Okay.
Okay. So before I tackle that, because it's an easy exercise, with the exercise stuff, again, with the 5 minutes per month type of thing, it's really personal preference. Okay. My deal has always been 5 minutes per month. So like right now, 10 minutes total of high activity.
Okay.
Running, fetching tennis balls, stuff like that. In my opinion, when it comes to more lax exercise, like just walking or just like a loose, just very slow meander, I go by the puppy. Puppies will tell you what's too much, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you go for a walk and maybe you want to do 30 minutes, but 15 to 20 minutes in, she's just pulling towards the shade, she's lying down, she's tanked, and she's going, I can't do it, then I know her cap is 15 to 20 minutes. So then I would do, 10 minutes one way and then 10 minutes back.
Yeah. The biggest thing we're concerned about is like overworking her, especially because she's like a large breed dog and like has some hip, like we're worried about hip dysplasia and problems later. And she's just like so big even for her size. Like there's puppies on our street that are still golden retrievers that are 12 and 13 weeks old that she's already bigger than, Yeah. She's a massive puppy.
Yeah.
So we're worried about overworking it.
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with Lord knows how many puppies over 10 years.
Yeah.
And Great Danes, German Shepherds, Cane Corsos, Rottweilers, like all these really massive dogs, right? And they do the same thing. And I have no problem with it. At the end of the day, I have no problem with it. But then they come back and go, Jesse, my puppy's tearing up everything. Yeah. Well, now there's no exercise. Mm-hmm. So everything's played by ear. I understand the concern. I understand the stuff. I was in a group the other day where somebody talked about a Great Dane puppy, and they just went on this rant about like, it's a Great Dane, there should be no exercise, like their bones are growing. I'm like, Jesus, like if you leave a dog and puppies to do their own thing, they're all over the place. Yeah. So personal preference, I keep an eye on her energy levels. If it looks like she's getting, because the toys and the chews that you're going to give her to kind of supplement, if she needs more exercise, it's not going to be enough. Right. Yeah. Right? So just play that stuff by ear. But that's
we feel a bit more comfortable when we're like when we go to the park or whatever, and it's at least softer ground. We feel a little bit better to kind of let her do what she wants until she's pooped. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. Well, we end up in an internet hole, and that'll scare anyone,
I come across it all the time. I've had many large breed puppies, and when people hold, that's why I would say your house, your rules, right? Yeah. I play it by ear. If you're dialing back on exercise because of joints,
yeah,
if the puppy looks frustrated or looks bored or is just terrorizing things, I'm like, it's because there's no exercise now. And that's where it's kind of like you either have the behavioral thing, or then you have like the kind of the how do you say, the physiological thing, right? Like, what are you trying to do? So it's kind of a balance of both. The puppy will tell you what's too much, what's not enough. So just kind of play that stuff by ear. But my general rule is that 5-minute thing is of high activity.
Okay,
you know?
got it.
That's how I look at it. And when the more lax stuff, puppies can do more. And I've taken puppies out, 3-4 months out an hour walk. Like, I built them up over the course of a week to 2 weeks, and they're just trucking along. They're like, boop, 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 no problem. And then they tank for the rest of the day, and they've been tough. But, personal preference. Was there a question before that? Before the
we were talking, I think our biggest thing that we're getting a little annoyed by is the mouthiness.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So when it comes to puppy biting, it's completely normal.
Of course.
Don't ever take it, I shouldn't say don't ever, but it's not aggressive. A lot of people misinterpret it and they'll say, Jesse, my puppy's aggressive. I'm like, how's your puppy? 3 months. I'm like, your puppy's not aggressive. Your puppy is playing. Okay.
Yeah, no, we totally get that.
Yeah. So obviously she's a dog.
Yeah.
The way they play is with their mouths.
Yeah.
So, but it doesn't transfer well in the human realm because we don't have to work to protect, our arms, hands, unless you're a very hairy person. But
like a baby's bottom.
Hey, so there's a couple of ways to go about correcting this. Okay. The first approach is the redirect, which is the most common approach. Okay. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't work. Okay? Or it'll stop working over a period of time.
Okay.
Because you're not telling or teaching the puppy to not nip you. You're simply changing the topic. So the puppy still wants to bite and nip and chew.
Yeah.
Right? And then you give it this object. And what can happen sometimes is you go, ow, you give them something else.
And it's a reward.
And it's boring because you move.
Yeah.
You say, ow, you give interaction, right? And that's where people start to have problems. So the first thing I always have everybody do is the redirect, just because it could help, right?
Yeah.
And if they come back and go, Jesse, the redirect didn't work. It doesn't work most of the time. Then I go, okay, no big deal. What we need to do now is clarify for the puppy. And what that means is you need to correct the puppy nipping and chewing when it's you or something they shouldn't chew on, and then redirect to something else. Okay. So if she's, let's say, for instance, chewing on a leg of a chair. Okay. She's chewing on that. And if you go, no, 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 and you pull her away and you give her the bone or the bully stick, and you're not really teaching her why she shouldn't chew I'm so confused, the leg of the chair today. Okay.
Speaking of which, I'm hearing her chew on something and I don't see it.
Got her thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're good.
So,
sorry. She's out of sight.
No, you're fine. Yeah, puppies are sneaky. So chewing on the leg of a chair for her doesn't mean anything, right? Like she's meant to be out chewing on tree bark, chewing on rocks, chewing on whatever she finds, and no one would care. But when it belongs to you, you care, right? So in order to stop that, we would need to apply an aversive so that it deters her from chewing on the leg of the chair. And then, so she goes, oh, I don't like that. There is a consequence when I put my teeth on this object. And then you give her something else. So she goes, okay, if I chew on that, something bad happens, but then you give me this, and when I chew on this, nothing bad happens. I'm gonna opt for this. Sense? Yeah. So for the aversive, the first thing I typically start off with is what's called a pet corrector. Okay, you can get them on Amazon. If you look up the term pet corrector, all it is a can of compressed air. Okay. And there's two ways of applying this. The original theory behind it is that it creates a hissing sound, just like that. Okay. Much like a can of pennies, and you can even use a can of pennies as well, right? That the loud shaking sound to startle the puppy. Okay. So if she's chewing on something, I would with the pet corrector, and you would ideally see a startled response. Okay. She might even yelp and like, get super startled. You do not want to console her. You do not want to coddle her. Okay. Let her just process and deal with it. So she goes to chew. You apply the sound. She jumps away. She goes, I didn't like that. Right. And then a few seconds goes by. She goes back to the leg of the chair. You spray it again. It startles her. And she goes, 2 out of 2 times that sound happened. I didn't like it. I'm going to leave the leg chair alone. Okay. When she walks away, you would then give her something else. You see that? So yeah. The conversation there. Now, more often than not, the sound will either lose its effectiveness or not deter the puppy at all. Okay. If that happens, I take the pet corrector and I spray the puppy on their hindquarters by the tail, on the butt. Okay. If you spray yourself, it's like a cold, weird sensation, right? It freaks out puppies a lot of times because they don't know what the sensation is, right? So you have to empower the tool, so to speak, like the sound, right? Because when it's just the sound, it doesn't mean anything. So the equivalent would be if my mom said, Jesse, don't do that. And all it was Jesse, don't do that. And I kept repeating the behavior. Who cares? Right? But the moment my mom said, Jesse, don't do that, and she spanked me, now Jesse, don't do that, had a totally different connotation. Right? The same thing with the pet corrector. I try the hiss first. Does it work? No. Let me empower the hiss by creating a physical connection with the puppy, right? So then a lot of like you'll spray them on the hindquarter, they'll go, and they'll run around looking at their tail like, what the hell was that? I leave them alone. I let them recover. And she's kind of sitting there like, what the hell just happened? And you'll even see them come back and like look at the chair kind of conspicuously, like what's going on? That's them figuring things out, okay? She walks away, good. Have this instead, okay? So it's the positive reinforcement aversive, okay? But when we look at dogs and puppies, they relate things to a dog bite because that's how her mom would correct her.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm gonna find some videos because I've been wanting to do a like kind of a explanational video to people like, hey, when a puppy steps out of line, this is what the mom does. And one of my employees was actually telling me that he saw a video of a bunch of puppies playing and the mom just came in and just like terrorized the puppies, and they were all yelping and then they just shut up and calmed down. But it looked really mean.
Yeah.
The way we view things, right? So if even the spray on the hindquarters doesn't work, I go, it's not a problem because it's a puppy. She's meant to be bitten, right? But a lot of times it will work for the puppies since they're not how'd you say? Their confidence isn't like fully there yet. They're like, whatever, it's just a can of air. But then you might find come month 5 to 6, now the spray can is ineffective. Then I move to the next thing. Does that make sense? So you just move which is funny because I've only ever had one dog be receptive to the pet corrector through adulthood. And it was a Cane Corso dog.
A what?
A Cane Corso. It's imagine a pit bull, but like 2.5 times bigger.
Wow.
They're massive, right?
It's like so big old baby.
Yeah, she's a big old badass looking dog. And this little can of air, she would stop everything. She wouldn't charge the door. She wouldn't bark at people. Everything just stopped. And I said, great. If that's what you want, like, cool. Here we go. We're done. Most puppies, it escalates to other means of correction. Okay. So if we apply this to nipping on your hands, let's say you're petting Josie, correct?
Yep.
So you're petting Josie, and a lot of times as you're petting them, they'll start to like go turn around and they'll
Yeah, it's exactly what she does. Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to have that pet corrector handy, and you can even tag team, and one of you has it while the other person is doing the exercise. And I'll show my hands here, okay? So when you're petting Josie, right, if she starts to nibble on my hand, the moment you see the mouth open, okay, to make contact, don't wait till she's already like this, okay? The moment you see the thought, you grab the corrector, you don't move this, you leave this there so she can go to attempt to nip at it, and I do the pet correction there, okay? So then if I'm petting her and I do that, you might see the startle, and I'll keep this hand here, and then I continue with what I was doing, okay? And then she's like, okay, that was weird. You were petting me, I tried to mouth you, this sound happened, I didn't like it, and then after it stopped and I didn't mouth you, you kept petting me, right? You're petting her, and all of a sudden she's like, all right, whatever. It was nothing. She tries to do it again. You repeat. Okay. So when we're applying corrections, if the activity was engagement through touch and petting, you have to keep the dog within the context. A lot of people do this where they pull their hands away.
Yeah.
You're removing the object, which takes the puppy out of context, that the correction doesn't resonate.
Yeah.
Okay. So I leave what she's attempting to nip and bite present. So she understands if I try to bite your hand, this happens. But as long as I lick it, even nuzzle it, nothing bad happens. Oh, okay. Just don't put my mouth on you. And then you can continue with the exercise.
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you move away, you make it more stimulating.
Yeah.
Now she's going to want to jump and bite at your hands because now they're moving.
Yeah.
Okay. Question so far.
We've been, we were like reading online trying to figure out like approaches to this, and a lot of the articles that we were reading were recommending like Yelp and like ignore her for 10 seconds.
Doesn't work.
Yeah. We've learned that. Okay.
Doesn't work. Yeah. And because you got to think, if Josie were to be doing this to her mother, the mother would just bite, right?
Yeah.
With puppies, when you yelp, ow, right, you don't sound like a puppy.
Yeah, that's fair.
So it doesn't resonate. When puppies do it to each other, you'll see it, right? But what also happens is if Josie were to do that to another puppy and it yelps and she keeps pursuing and goes, screw you, I want to keep playing, that puppy would come and bite her back and say enough, right? That's what's missing a lot of times in these. Do they talk about any kind of physical correction at all in the video and in the articles?
Yeah, that's fair.
Right? It's all about ignore the puppy or put them in timeout or yelp and turn around, right? This is why I have a career.
Yeah.
But those methods don't work, you know?
Yeah. I'm reading all these articles, like just following, just like knowing enough about dogs and like reading like what you've put out there and like the books that Maddie's recommended and talking to her, like I'm amazed at how much bad information is out there on everything from nutrition to training. Like it's remarkable how hard it is to find like information that works.
Yes. And it's because, you know, it's a pet industry.
Nope.
You know, it's meant to make money. And people will always gravitate to the positive because it makes them feel good. Right? It makes someone feel good to think I can raise a dog or a puppy to a dog with purely positive experiences. And it's not realistic, but it makes them feel good. So they kind of keep feeding into it. And I had one gentleman who spent like 10 grand on positive only trainers. He had like 3 to 4 of them to fix an aggression issue. And I was like, why did you spend $10,000 if it wasn't working? And he's like, well, I just kept hoping that this one person would be different. Yeah. And I came along and I was like, no, your dog just needs discipline. And then I fixed the issue. So, when it comes to the pet corrector, you know, it can work for puppies, which is why I like to kind of work people through the phases, because it's not that simple for someone to think like, okay, dogs bite each other, so if my puppy bites me, I'm gonna do the equivalent, because it's too confrontational. They don't like the conflict. But when you go through the stages of redirecting, timeout, pet corrector, and you're like, it didn't work, and you're frustrated, and you're like, okay, I just need something that works now, like I know, then I go, okay, here's the next step. Okay, because I've worked with so many people that it's not just the puppy, it's you as well, like you're learning.
Yeah, totally.
So the pet corrector is and I actually have a video, and I'll see if I can dig it up. It's an old video. I demonstrate me with a puppy using the tool. Okay, so you can get a visual of how it's supposed to look.
That'd be great.
When it comes to the corrections in puppy behavior, this pet corrector can be used for anything you disagree with.
Okay.
Chewing on your hands, chewing on furniture, barking. If you don't want zoomies, you can technically use it to stop zoomies. You know, anything that you don't want her to do is what you would use it for. Okay. So when we talk about the training, aversives are meant to stop behaviors you do not want to see again. Okay. So like, you ever touch a hot stove? Yeah. You would not.
Only once.
Right? Exactly. It's an aversive.
Yeah.
For me growing up, being spanked, you know, my mom didn't want to see me being lazy and not doing my chores. There was a consequence for it. So then I had a negative motivation of, I better do my chores or I'm going to get spanked. Right? Same thing for dogs. So I always suggest that people make a list of like the stuff they don't like, you know, and then they use the corrective to stop those things. And you might find it's effective for some, it may not be effective for others, and then we just kind of work through those things.
Yeah.
Like right now, I heard you say off, for instance.
We kind of just go when she's like chewing on something. That's like
Sure.
Like the noise we make when we don't like what she's doing.
Yeah, it works sometimes.
Yeah.
Not. It depends on the task, like you just said.
Correct. So the is the equivalent of the hiss.
Yeah.
Right? So once you get that, the way you would apply this, and the way I want you to start thinking now, is we're very sound-based, right? No, don't do that. Stop, off, right? Is when you are working with a puppy in behavior, I want you to think what you want to eliminate and then what you want to control. Okay. When you want to eliminate a behavior like chewing on furniture, you actually don't want to say anything. You just correct. Okay. The reason is the way a dog's brain learns is if she's chewing on the couch and you go and you use your corrector, you've created a sequence. And she goes, okay, I was chewing on the furniture, I heard this sound, and then the aversive happened. So then she thinks she can technically do the behavior until she hears the sound. Right? So if you're not looking and you're doing work from home and she wanders off and she's like, I want to chew on the couch, let's see what happens. She starts doing it and you don't hear it for 15 minutes. She thinks she can chew it for 15 minutes. Right? So when you want to eliminate a behavior, you apply the aversive the moment you see the behavior, no warning. That's how puppies and dogs learn. So then she thinks, I really want to chew on that couch, but I don't want to risk the aversive because there's no warning.
Okay.
Right?
That makes sense.
So what is there a way, like, if we were to do this today, like for us to empower that like sound? I like that just because I don't need anything around me, right? Is there something I can do to like correct her without having the hissing sound? Like, can I don't know, what would that correction look like without a warning?
So there's two other types of corrections that I use. Okay. And one of them, I'll make a note here to myself so I don't forget.
Hey, baby.
Have you ever heard of a bonker?
What's a bonker? No.
Okay. making notes here. So
Good girl.
with the pet corrector, right, if you choose to use that, or in the meantime, or if you decide to skip it, because it may or may not work for certain things, right, is the next step that I go to is what's called a bunker. And it's simply a rolled up towel. And you can use hair bands or rubber bands to keep its cylinder shape. So it's a soft but firm surface, okay? And you literally bonk the puppy. I will send you 3 links to videos so that you can see it. One explains what it is, how to make one, and the other one is a trainer actively using one with a puppy, okay?
Awesome.
So the bonker is essentially the human form of replicating a physical aversive, right? That's not going to actually hurt the dog because it's a towel, okay? But it's physical, okay? So if she's like in the video that I'll send you, you'll see the trainer and he's got food in his hand, and the puppy's being very pushy and just trying to get the treats in his hand, and he literally just bonks the puppy, right? And you see the puppy back away and get very timid, and he ignores the puppy and lets it recover. The puppy then comes back very cautiously but respectfully and waits to get the treats. So he just taught the puppy, if you push for this, you're going to get this firm correction, but it's not like a brick, right?
Yeah.
The puppy didn't like it, and then processed, and then he rewarded the behavior he wanted, okay? So then what I recommend is that if my clients use this approach, that they make about 3 to 5 of them. And for instance, like let's say she's chewing on the furniture and you have a couple right there next to you. You could just throw one, right? Because a flying object, like even people, like if something's flying at you, the first thing you do is duck, right? And you're meant to make contact. You're not going to hurt her. It's a rolled up towel, right? But it's a negative experience to something you're trying to stop. So if you use the word you would you would follow it up immediately with the bunker correction.
Got it. Okay.
Right. And that's something, of course, you can even use a t-shirt, whatever. Like when you see it, you're like, oh, okay, I can make that, whatever.
Yeah.
The reason why I tell people to make multiple is sometimes with puppies, you'll do the first correction and they'll look at you and then pick it up like it's a toy and run around shaking it. Okay.
Yeah.
So you have to make it not a toy.
Yeah.
And then that's why I cycle through them. I'll keep going through the bunkers until eventually the puppy goes, crap, this is not fun. Right. So growing up, when I became like probably when I was like 12 or 13, I kind of outgrew spanking. And my mom tried to spank me and I started laughing. Right. Because I was like, whatever, I'm like 13 years old. I'm not a little kid anymore. So she kept spanking me until it wasn't funny anymore. She continued like, all right, you think this is a joke? I'm going to show you the joke, right? So it's not the same with the puppy. If I do the first correction, they pick up the toy like, this is nice. I go, all right, well, bonk, bonk. I keep just going through them until eventually the puppy goes, crap, this is not fun. And I go, no, this is discipline time. And then they'll back off and it's no longer a game anymore. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, when you do these physical corrections, you want to do them immediately. Do not give her the opportunity to be a good girl. Okay? Because that's how most people look at their dogs. No, and they'll wait, and the dog will look at you, and they'll kind of keep going. I'm like, no, right? Because they're hoping their dog will be a good dog, stop the behavior so they don't have to correct them because they feel bad. I understand. But what's going to happen is you're going to get frustrated. And then frustration is going to come through the correction, right? And that's where we start delving into an unhealthy area. So, but if I'm correcting from the get-go, I'm not frustrated. Plus, she's not learning that there's a window.
Yeah.
Right. Windows, even if you do and you wait 3 seconds before you correct, you're creating a 3-second window. And dogs will take advantage of those windows. Okay. And I actually just did something on my Instagram where I said, don't ever delay your corrections ever. Because that's what most people do. And even some trainers. And I said it in response to another trainer because he said, say your word no, wait, and then correct. And I'm like, no. Because then your dog's going to learn to play with that window. I see it all the time because that's what everybody does. Okay. So you have your word and then it's an immediate correction. And what you want to start seeing is that she doesn't even do it. Otherwise, you're going to just be saying 100 times a day.
Yeah.
And
right.
it's kind of like a trial type of thing, you know?
Okay.
So I would say, the cues, I understand there is a degree of having a cue to stop something. There is use for it. Like in the time, like for instance, you would empower that phrase, and then maybe one day she does something and you don't happen to have your correctional tool, but you use your cue, but you've empowered it so much that she's like, uh-oh, and she just stops.
Right.
That's not detrimental because you got her to stop the behavior because you already did the work of making the word mean something.
Yeah.
In the beginning, when people they keep playing with like hoping the puppy does the right thing and avoid the correction, and that creates a gambler. Okay. The last form of correction that I use for puppies is the Cesar Millan method. If you watch his old episodes, like the original Dog Whisperer, you may see him where he takes his hand and like he makes this kind of shape.
Yeah.
It's to mimic a dog bite, as he says. I use those corrections as well with puppies.
And you just like,
You get like the back.
you just tap them?
Yeah, so like, can you hear that?
Yeah.
Right, so that's some intensity there, okay? Most people just do like a very light touch. So if you're doing it with your hand, it should feel uncomfortable.
Okay.
Right? That's the Cesar Millan touch. And essentially, he's just trying to mimic a dog bite. So when a dog does something he disagrees with, he does that correction to get them to cut it out, right? But there's also follow-up where he like puts presence and asserts himself, which a lot of people miss. He also does that sound, right, as his correctional phrase. But if you watch carefully, when he does that sound, he follows it up with this, right? So means correction, and that empowers it. That's why he's able to do that and stop dogs, because he's actually empowered himself in their mind. Okay.
Right.
The reason why I don't do that off the bat is, one, it's a skill. It takes time to learn how to apply it correctly. Don't be surprised if your puppy starts to fight back, right? Because now you're using physicality, and it's direct physicality with you. That puppies will start to snap back. And then people get concerned because they go, are you making my puppy aggressive? I go, no. You have to understand that in the dog world, respect isn't given, it's earned. Right? So if I correct her with my hand, she goes, screw you, I'm Josie. Boom.
Yeah.
Right? That's how dogs settle things. And they would just keep going back and forth until somebody wins. So if I see that happen, I just correct them again until they submit. But for the average dog owner, when they see that, they go, am I making a problem here? I'm like, no, your dog is protesting, and they protest through physical confrontation. So you have to be ready to win that conversation. So I tend to stay away from it because it's hard for people to do it with a puppy. Like psychologically, they feel like they're hitting their dog. They feel like they're hurting their dog. And I go, technically, yes, there's some hurt or discomfort, but it's not meant out of meanness. It's meant to correct and deter the behavior in a way that she understands, right?
Got it.
So the bonker, there's a disconnect because it's an object not tied to you. If you throw it, it's not that physical. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you ever see her protest a correction, okay, don't worry, don't overreact. Always keep your cool. Okay, whether it happens to be she's overly startled and gets spooked, or you feel like she's becoming aggressive. Okay, trust me, it's the puppy learning to process and learning what it can and can't do. Okay, if you mishandle it with emotion, that's where problems happen, right? So if she nips back and you go, no, bad dog, that is what screws the dog up.
Okay.
Not the fact that I came in and corrected it. If you see me correcting puppies, I'm always just neutral. And I get them to submit. And I go, okay, cool, you stopped the behavior, we had her talk, bye. That's how they handle things. Okay. But the bonker is the next level above the pet corrector. and then I have, you always have your hands, hopefully, so that if you need to correct, that's always available to you. Okay. So if it's not effective, it's because you're having to learn a skill. Okay. Questions about that?
Yeah. Is there, should we be committing one of the three, or is there a downside to going back and forth between the different methods?
I would say if you're going to do the pet corrector, you ride with it for a week or two.
Okay.
Okay. Unless it's very evident, like this is not working, then I jump to the next one. The bonker and the Caesar Milan approach, you can use, with each other, because you can create the same intensity and physicality. But if you jump between the pet corrector, which is not as much of an aversive as the bonker or the Caesar Milan touch, there's such a big gap there that the way, in my opinion, the dog perceives it is sometimes you're being soft and sometimes you're being hard, and then there's inconsistency. But if you shift from one to the other, and it's like, all right, it's like going back to me, growing up as a kid, spanking was the thing, but then I outgrew that at some point from my mom. So then guess who spanked me? My dad. Right? It escalated. And then my mom didn't spank me anymore. It was my dad. But then after that stopped working, for humans, there was now you can't see your friends for a month. Right? You can't do that with puppies, but they kept escalating. And once they hit that point, they didn't regress. It was like, this is now the correction. And if you don't want to gamble it, don't do it. Okay. That's how I look at it. And then what you want to see is over the course of time, and with aversives, this should be quick, is you're doing them less and less.
Right.
Like this week might be 20 corrections, and then next week 10, and the next week 5, the next week 3, the next week 1, 2 weeks, then 1, It's a pretty big learning curve because nobody likes negative experiences.
Okay. That makes sense. I don't know. The other thing that I was kind of thinking about was we've gotten her to she understands sit, she understands down. The only way she does come or is we'll walk away and she follows us. But she doesn't really I don't know. I'd love to get come down sooner rather than later, just in case whatever she's in a park and starts running, or I don't know. I feel like that's an important one to learn just for safety's sake. But I wanted to ask you about that command and how you sort of go about teaching it.
So the first thing I do is always on leash.
Okay.
So when we're working with dogs, the main thing is always consistency. Okay. Whether or not I get it to happen immediately or not, I'm not ever worried about. It's just making it happen that's most important. Okay. So if I have Josie on a leash, and you can even get a long training leash, they range from
We've got one.
Yeah. And you go to the park, whatever, and I go, Josie, come. And she's like, nope, I'm sniffing this flower. Well, now I can reel her in. You're going to get over here, right? And when she arrives, good, I give her a treat. So to her brain, even, yes, you did all the work technically, but you made it happen, right?
Okay.
So let's say if you fast forward and, you tell Josie to sit and she doesn't sit. Like most people keep repeating or trying to get the dog's attention. I just go grab the dog and make him sit. And the dog goes, okay, I tried to ignore you, but you just made me do it. Okay. So then they think well, there's no point in ignoring because then you're just going to make it happen anyways. Right. And then there's more advanced techniques to help reinforce that stuff. So for the puppies, I always start on leash because people tend to jump ahead, especially if they've got a good few successes. They tend to take that as face value, like, oh, this is amazing, it's super easy. Until one day the puppy decides to ignore them, right? So if I have her on the leash, I can avoid that from happening. And you don't ever want to give a command when you cannot reinforce it.
Okay.
I don't care if it's food-based training or prong collar or e-collar. I never give a command if I can't make it happen when I'm in that training phase or learning phase with the puppy. Okay. So if you're if let's say she's naked, no collar or anything like that, and you're doing food and you do sit and you tell her to sit and she's just not doing it, you're kind of screwed because there's no way like nothing to grab onto to kind of make the sit happen, right? So at minimum, I'd have a collar on, but the leash just makes things easier. So you can condition, 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 and condition, right? And what I like to do with couples is one of you can have like her regular kibble, and then whoever's doing the recall have something better.
Okay.
Okay. So you're using it as a distraction with the kibble. You're not allowing her to get it. It's in my hand. She's sniffing at it. And the other person, Josie, come, right? And I start to move backwards with the leash. And eventually the leash is going to turn her. And she should start making her way towards me. And then I immediately reward. And I think I have videos of me working with puppies as well that I'll forward to you.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure everything in the come command. But I would do everything on leash. And what I suggest is, like, let's say you take her out on a walk. She does her potty break. After the end of her potty break and stuff, if she's distracted and sniffing, I use those moments to practice. Okay. If you already have her attention in like your living room, it's super easy, right? I want to start training towards what real life looks like. So if I'm at the park and she's sniffing a bunch of things, I'll sneak behind her with my long leash, Josie, come, and start moving back and reeling her in and feed her when she arrives there, to start teaching the concept of, you might be doing something and I'm going to need you to do something else. Okay. So you're just getting that seed in there. And then and you might see at some point you're calling her and she's just turning around and coming to you. You keep practicing with the leash. Okay. When you do positive training, it takes months to years, okay, of reinforcement. So in the early stage, I still have people keep them on a leash always, unless, and if you're at the dog park, for example, and she's walking around being distracted, I tell my clients, don't call your puppy at the dog park, because she's not. I know it's not until you do advanced training is it, how do you say, proofed. But the reason why I say that is, if you call her and she looks at you and she goes, not today, and she keeps playing with her friends, there's no way, you have to walk over there now, then you grab her, and then you leash her, and she goes, okay, well, I can ignore you, and the worst that happens is you come and grab me and leash me up.
Yeah.
Right. So then she learns that she can ignore. So that's why, when it comes to training,
control it a little.
Yeah. And then the level of control that you're wanting, how do you say, it's just limited by what you're comfortable with in the training approaches. Okay. So if, like, yourself, and this is just as an example, you only want to do food-based training, you're going to have a very low ceiling. Okay. Where I would advise, I would say, like, you know what, if you're at a dog park, no big deal, because if she doesn't respond, you can simply grab her. She's not going to run anywhere. But if she's off leash at the beach somewhere where there's no enclosure, I was like, I would be very wary, because if something catches her eye and you've only done food-based training, you could potentially lose your dog, right? And most people go by the positive experiences, because, like, Jesse, my dog's never ran off on me. I'm like, not yet.
Right.
But I hear a lot of stories, and I get a lot of people who are like, we did a positive only and it was great until our dog ran away. So just something to bear in mind.
Yeah.
Other questions?
No, that makes sense. And I mean, Meg and I will talk philosophies as we kind of debrief this call later. But in general, I think, like, as long as we know how to do it in safe and productive ways, I'm on board with some correction and negative reinforcement, as long as it's done properly.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
It's all about the energy. And when I've had, like, for instance, I don't know if you guys have seen this dog bite. This was from a dog that didn't want to go in the kennel. Okay. And when this happened, the dog obviously became aggressive, and I was completely calm the entire time. I didn't get angry. I didn't become overly aggressive towards the dog, because the dog was reacting out of fear. So I could see into it and go, this is a dog that doesn't want to do harm. He just doesn't know what to do. And his only outlet is, I need to get rid of you so I can run away and be safe. Right? So I decompress the situation, right? So, but a lot of people think when we're doing aversives, how do you say, like with this aggression here, someone would think like you must have like beat the crap out of the dog after they bit you, right? Or like really punished them with the e-collar. I go, no, I didn't. I have it on video. I didn't. I was completely calm. I helped the dog calm down, and I put him under a little pressure to de-escalate him. But when people see something, they typically come back at it with how do you say, more aggression.
Yeah.
Right. And when you're doing corrections, it's always neutral. Even when I get my highly aggressive dogs, people think you must come in and just beat the dog. I go, I don't. If I did, I wouldn't have a business.
Yeah.
Everything's done. It's calculated. It's appropriate to the dog. It's appropriate to the personality type. It's appropriate to the behavior, right? Even in cases where, let's say Josie's chewing on the couch, right? And you do all these corrections, the bonker, everything. You're like, Jesse, she won't stop chewing on the couch. Logically, you would think it doesn't garner a really harsh correction, but she may need a really harsh correction to deter her.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Like her personality type is just saying, nope, that's not enough. This is worth it for me to keep garnering those corrections. Then we escalate it, right? Mm-hmm. And some puppies, like the Canine Perspective puppy, was super receptive to just the sound of the spray. And I was like, all right, well then that's all you need for your puppy. You don't need this other stuff.
Yeah.
You know? So that's why it's always a process as you learn your puppy and your dog.
So we'll start there then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
Anything else?
Well, awesome. I think I'm good. We're heading out to a park date. Do you have any others?
I think so.
This is super helpful, Jesse. Thank you so much.
For the next class, if this is all getting you good progress, we can start working with like the food-based stuff. So you just need a space where you work. And then I recommend not feeding before the session so that she's hungry for the training.
Okay.
Great. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Take care.
Awesome.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
See ya.